The deep void between stars was endless, a black ocean of cold silence where only machines dared to breathe. The Galactic Empire's patrol fleet moved slowly through that emptiness, their ships like specks of dust against infinity. For generations they had guarded this frontier, scanning the dark for smugglers, rebels, or pirates. But tonight something felt different. The crew on the bridge of the flagship Vigilant Star sat in uneasy quiet. The hum of the engines was the only sound. They were used to silence, but not this kind. This silence felt alive, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Commander Yaris stood by the viewing window, his arms folded behind his back, staring at the endless night. He had served the Empire for 30 years and had seen every kind of enemy imaginable, but something about this sector made his skin crawl. The sensors had been showing faint fluctuations all day, tiny energy spikes that came and went like whispers. He had reported it twice, and both times the Central Command said the same thing. Static interference. Proceed with your route. So he kept watching, waiting, listening to the hum of the void. Then it happened. A small tone, almost too soft to notice, echoed through the deck. The communications officer frowned, tapping the screen. "Commander, there's something." The rest of the crew turned toward her. "Define something," Yaris said calmly, though his pulse quickened. "A signal, sir," she replied, her eyes narrowing as she adjusted the scanner's focus. "It's faint, very faint, but it's not background radiation. It's structured, encoded." Yaris walked over to her station and leaned in. The display showed a repeating pulse, short, sharp, rhythmic. "Definitely artificial." "Origin?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. It came from deep space near the outer rim." The room grew still. Everyone knew what that meant. The outer rim was dead space, the region where old human colonies once existed before the Great Purge erased them from history. 200 years had passed since the Empire declared humanity extinct. No transmissions, no survivors, nothing. Until now. The officer hesitated before whispering, "Sir, the signature matches pre-purge Terran code." Yaris felt a chill crawl down his spine. "That's impossible," he muttered. "Run it again." She did. The same result. Terran encryption. Obsolete but clear. "It's human." A murmur spread through the bridge. Some of the younger crew exchanged nervous looks. They had grown up hearing stories about humans. Monsters, machines, ghosts from a forgotten war. The Empire had taught them that humanity destroyed itself, that Earth burned because of its own arrogance. But there were other stories, ones whispered in secret about the fleet that vanished into the dark, about men and women who swore they would return one day to avenge their world. "Patch it through," Yaris ordered. The signal came alive through the speakers. A burst of static, then a single sentence spoken in a voice that felt like thunder trapped in ice. "Inbound. Do not interfere." The words were calm, measured, yet heavy enough to make every heart in the room skip a beat. Then the transmission ended. No one spoke. For a full minute, the bridge was silent except for the soft hum of power systems. Finally, Yaris exhaled. "Log it, encrypt it, send it to Central Command." The officer nodded, but her hands trembled as she worked. "Sir," another voice called from the tactical console, "I'm tracing the origin point. You'll want to see this." Yaris walked over. The holo display expanded, showing a vast map of the galaxy. A single dot blinked in red, moving fast, impossibly fast. "That can't be right," Yaris said. "What's its velocity?" The technician swallowed. "Faster than any recorded drive, sir. It's moving faster than light." The bridge filled with quiet disbelief. No known species had ever mastered faster than light travel. The Empire's own ships relied on hyperspace routes that took days to cross a single sector. But this thing, this one object, was crossing them in seconds. "Where is it heading?" Yaris asked. The answer came slow like a curse. "The Imperial capital, sir." Straight line. No deviation. A cold sweat ran down Yaris's neck. He knew what that meant. Whoever it was, whatever it wasn't lost. It was coming directly for the heart of the Empire. "How long until intercept?" "At this speed? Less than 2 days." Yaris turned toward the window again. The stars looked smaller now, as if they too were afraid. "Wake the fleet," he said quietly. "Alert every patrol in the sector. Nothing enters Imperial space without permission." He paused, glancing at the comms officer. "And scramble an encrypted message to the Admiralty. Tell them the ghosts of Earth are coming home." Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. In command centers, admirals stared in disbelief. In universities, scientists tore through ancient archives searching for data on human technology. Every species that had once fought beside the Empire whispered the same question: how could they be back? In the imperial court, word reached the throne itself. The emperor, an old being of cold logic and sharper cruelty, sat motionless as his ministers argued. "It's a trick," one said. "Some rebel using old Terran codes." Another shook his head. "No one could forge this speed. If it is human, we must prepare." The emperor lifted his eyes slowly. "For 2 centuries, humanity has been a corpse," he said softly. "If a corpse walks again, then we are the ones who should fear the grave." Back aboard the Vigilant Star, the crew watched the blinking dot draw closer on the hollow map. It moved without pattern, without signal, without reason, yet with absolute purpose. Every few hours, the scanners would glitch, showing impossible readings: gravity distortions, energy fields that bent light, heat signatures colder than space itself. Yaris ordered all ships to maintain a wide perimeter, but he could feel the fear spreading. Some crew members refused to sleep. Others prayed quietly to gods they hadn't believed in for years. The stories had returned, of Terran fleets with hulls blacker than night, of weapons that could shatter moons, of humans who fought until their hearts stopped and then kept fighting anyway. "Commander," the young officer whispered, "what if they're angry?" Yaris didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone knew the truth. If humans were truly back, anger would be the least of their worries. As hours passed, strange things began to happen. Ships near the signal reported systems flickering, artificial gravity shifting, and sensors detecting impossible coordinates. One frigate swore they saw something. A shadow moving through the void, larger than a city, silent as death. But when they turned their scanners toward it, there was nothing. The captain of that frigate, a seasoned veteran, transmitted his last message before vanishing. "It's watching us." The Vigilant Star received only static after that. Yaris didn't order a search. He knew it would be useless. The Empire's might meant nothing against whatever had awakened. Then on the second night, the signal changed. The encrypted pulses grew stronger, forming patterns almost like a heartbeat. Every pulse caused a faint vibration through the hull of the Vigilant Star. The crew could feel it in their bones. When the communications officer decoded the new message, her voice trembled. "It says arrival imminent." The room went dead silent. Outside the window, the stars flickered, just once, as if the universe blinked. And then they saw it. At first it looked like a shadow crossing the void, a blur against nothing. Then the scanners picked up its outline. A ship, enormous, sleek, shaped like an arrow of pure darkness. It moved without engines, without light, without sound. Every system on the Vigilant Star began to fail. Lights dimmed, gravity fluctuated, and comms turned to static. Yaris stood frozen, staring through the viewport as the object slowed and came to a stop a few kilometers away. It didn't match any known design. No thrusters, no markings, no windows. It looked alive. The crew panicked. "Weapons online," shouted the tactical officer, but nothing responded. "Shields down. Reactors failing. Reboot the system." Yaris barked, but his voice shook. The ship's AI responded with a phrase no one had ever heard before. "Access denied. Superior control detected. Superior control? Over Imperial systems? Impossible." Yet as they watched, the human ship drifted closer. A ripple of energy spread through the void, visible even to the naked eye. Waves of blue light, silent and slow. Every instrument on board overloaded. Sparks flew. The smell of burning metal filled the air. "Commander," the officer screamed. "It's scanning us." The holographic display lit up with hundreds of data streams pouring in, but none of it made sense. "They're reading everything," she said. "All our codes, all our logs, even our personnel files." Yaris clenched his fists. "That's not a scan. That's a warning." The voice came next. Not through comms, not through speakers, but directly inside their minds. A calm, emotionless tone, neither male nor female. "We warned you once. You did not listen." Some crew fell to their knees. Others screamed. "Who are you?" Yaris shouted, though he already knew. The voice replied, "You remember us as extinct. That was your first mistake." The lights flickered again. Every display on the bridge changed at once, showing an old image. A blue planet, half burned, half beautiful. Earth. The continents were cracked, Oceans boiled, cities turned to ash. Then the image shifted, showing ships, thousands of them, leaving the planet before the flames consumed it. "You erased our home," the voice said, "but you did not erase us." The vision faded. The crew sat in stunned silence. "If this is real," whispered the communications officer, "then we killed gods." Before anyone could respond, the human ship powered up. A low hum filled the void like the sound of a heartbeat magnified 1,000 times. The sensors screamed as their readings spiked beyond measurable limits. "Energy surge!" someone yelled. "It's off the charts." "Brace for impact!" Yaris shouted, gripping the rail. But the energy wave didn't destroy them. It passed through the fleet like a breath of wind, harmless yet terrifying. When it was over, the stars seemed clearer, brighter, closer. "What did it do?" the engineer whispered. "It didn't attack," Yaris said softly. "It looked at us." He stared at the massive ship ahead, and it decided we weren't worth killing. Moments later, the ship vanished. Not jumped, not warped, and vanished. The space where it had been folded in on itself, leaving behind only silence and a faint afterglow. The fleet scrambled to re-establish communications, but all long-range systems were dead. Central Command sent frantic queries. Every admiral demanded answers. Yaris simply transmitted one line back: "Contact confirmed. Humanity has returned." He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Outside his window, the stars flickered again, as if whispering a secret only they knew. Somewhere out there, a ghost had awakened, and it was moving toward the heart of the Empire. In the following hours, strange reports flooded in from every sector. Stations went dark. Navigation buoys disappeared. Whole fleets lost contact. The pattern was always the same, and a signal, a shadow, and then silence. The Empire's greatest scientists gathered to analyze the data. Every reading defied logic. Some claimed the human ship was made of material not found anywhere in the known galaxy. Others said it existed partially outside time itself, slipping between moments like a phantom. "This isn't a warship," one physicist said in fear. "It's something else, something that shouldn't exist." The Empire tried to contain the panic, but it was too late. Word spread across colonies and trade routes. The phrase echoed on every world: "The humans are back." Meanwhile, far beyond the edge of Imperial space, in the deep void where no star shone, a fleet of black ships gathered. Their hulls shimmered like liquid night. Inside one of them, a figure stood before a vast window, a human, eyes pale, skin scarred by old radiation. He watched the distant light of the Empire's worlds and spoke softly, almost kindly. They thought extinction meant surrender. They never understood what it made us. Behind him, other humans moved quietly, their faces calm, their technology pulsing with silent power. One of them turned and asked, "Are they ready?" The man smiled faintly. "No, but we are." The ship's engines stirred, not with fire or fuel, but with something deeper, a hum that resonated with the heartbeat of the universe itself. Then, as the stars bent around them, they vanished once more, leaving behind only a whisper that traveled faster than any signal ever known. "Inbound," the voice said across the stars. "Do not interfere." The Empire didn't sleep that night. Across the capital worlds, alarms whispered in the dark. Fleets were called to readiness, and every communication hub buzzed with confusion. The Admiralty denied panic, but even the common traders in orbit could feel it. The galaxy's most powerful empire had been touched by something it couldn't explain. Rumors spread faster than light. They said a Terran ship had returned from the dead, that it disabled fleets without firing a shot, that it spoke inside minds like a god. Some laughed, but those who had seen the transmission from the Vigilant Star didn't. They remembered the cold voice that had said, "We warned you once," and they knew something far greater than war was coming. Out on the edge of Imperial space, the darkness was thicker now, alive with energy. The Vigilant Star and its escorts held position near the anomaly's last coordinates, surrounded by silence. Commander Yaris hadn't moved from the viewport in hours. His uniform was torn, his eyes hollow, but his mind refused to rest. The image of that ship haunted him. The way it appeared from nowhere, the way it looked at them without eyes. He had seen many battles in his life, but never something that made the void itself seem afraid. His second officer approached quietly, holding a datapad. "Sir, the Admiralty has sent orders. They're deploying the 7th Fleet to intercept the contact point." Yaris didn't turn around. "7th Fleet, That's 300 warships. Yes, sir, the officer said. They believe overwhelming force will— Force, Yaris interrupted, his voice low, is useless against ghosts. The officer hesitated, not sure what to say. Shall I acknowledge the order? No, Yaris said. They wouldn't listen anyway. He finally turned from the window and looked around at his exhausted crew. Maintain position. If the humans come back, I want them to see that at least one ship didn't run. Hours stretched into a day. Then, just as hope began to fade, the sensors flared again. Contact! The radar officer shouted. The bridge filled with noise. Direction, 200 marks above Galactic plane. Distance 8 million kilometers and closing fast. Yaris steadied himself. Visual? Not yet, sir. The readings are impossible. Define impossible. It's not one ship, sir. The room went cold. How many? The officer swallowed hard. Unknown. The sensors can't count them. They're flickering in and out of detection. Yaris moved closer. Flickering? Yes, sir. Like they exist for a moment, then vanish again. The Admiral frowned. They're not using hyperspace, are they? No, sir. They're inside real space. That couldn't be true. Nothing could move like that inside real space without tearing itself apart. Yet the displays showed hundreds of faint signals, appearing and disappearing across the system, closing in like ghosts swimming through the dark. All stations, battle readiness, Yaris ordered. Bring up full shields, charge weapons, and open a broad-range hail. Maybe they'll listen this time. The comms officer nodded and opened frequencies across all spectrums. Unidentified vessel group, this is Commander Yaris of the Galactic Empire, she began, her voice trembling slightly. Identify yourselves or we will consider you hostile. The reply came instantly, not through comms but through every speaker, every display, even the crew's implants. You have already identified us. The voice was calm, emotionless, familiar. The crew froze. Yaris clenched his jaw. We don't seek conflict, he said. State your intentions. A long pause followed, like the voice was thinking or remembering. Then it said, You declared war 2 centuries ago. You never stopped. Before Yaris could reply, the void itself seemed to bend. A ripple of black light appeared on the view screen, expanding outward. Space folded like liquid, and from the distortion emerged a single ship. The same one that had haunted Yaris's dreams since the encounter. It was larger now, clearer. Its hull absorbed light as if the universe refused to touch it. It had no engines, no markings, no sign of heat or life, but it moved with purpose. The crew stared, silent and pale. Magnify, Yaris whispered. The image zoomed in until the ship filled the screen. Its surface pulsed faintly, almost like breathing. Is it alive? One of the engineers asked. No one answered. Suddenly, every console on the bridge went dark. The lights dimmed and the hum of the engines died. The vigilant star drifted helplessly. We've lost power, someone shouted. Reactor offline. Weapons unresponsive. Backup systems. Yaris barked. Nothing. Even emergency lights refused to come on. Then a faint glow appeared on the floor. Symbols ancient and unknown, burning softly in blue light. They spread like veins across the deck, up the walls, along the ceiling, until the entire room was wrapped in light. And then the voice returned. You are trespassing in the ruins of your own lies. The symbols pulsed in rhythm with the words. You built empires from ashes you did not own. You called it order. We call it theft. The crew looked around, terrified. What do you want from us? Yaris demanded. To remember, the voice said. Then as suddenly as it began, the lights came back. The consoles flickered alive. Every system rebooted at once. But something had changed. The star map now showed a single object at the center. Earth. Not as it was now, a burned husk, but as it had been centuries ago. Green, alive, full of oceans and clouds. They're projecting data, the comms officer said. Historical records. How? Yaris asked, but the answer came before she could speak. The ship's holographic table activated on its own, showing images, war, fire, broken cities, the purge. Imperial fleets raining plasma on human worlds, children running through ash, soldiers standing their ground as the sky fell. The bridge went quiet except for the sound of faint static. Yaris felt his chest tighten. He had seen classified records of the purge, but never like. Back on the Vigilant Star, The crew tried to re-establish contact with the fleet, but every channel returned static. Then a strange noise began to echo through the hull, slow, rhythmic thumps, like a heartbeat coming from outside. "External audio feed," Yaris ordered. The sound grew louder, pulsing in time with the lights flickering across the bridge. "It's coming from the ship," said the sensor officer. "They're broadcasting something. Can we translate it?" "Working on it, sir." Moments later, words appeared on the screen. "We see you." "Commander," the comms officer said quietly. "They're talking directly to us." "Respond," Yaris said. "Tell them." The voice interrupted again, louder this time, resonating through metal and bone. "You cannot stop what has already begun." Yaris stepped closer to the viewport. "Then tell me what's begun." Silence. Then, faintly, a single phrase that chilled everyone who heard it. "The reckoning." Without warning, the human ship began to move. It turned slowly, almost gracefully, aligning itself with the Imperial capital's coordinates. Then it vanished. No flash, no warp, no signature. Just gone. "Where did it go?" Yaris shouted. "Track it." "Trying, sir. It's everywhere." The readings show it across multiple sectors simultaneously. The impossible was happening. The same ship appearing in different parts of space at once, defying all known physics. "This isn't a fleet," Yaris whispered. "It's one ship moving through multiple timelines." He stared at the main display, where the faint outline of the human craft shimmered across maps like a ghost. "They're not traveling through space," he said. "They're traveling through memory." Back at the capital, alarms screamed across the city. The Emperor stood on his balcony, staring at the night sky where something dark was moving among the stars. "How close?" he demanded. "Minutes," his aide said. "It can't be that fast." "It can," the Emperor interrupted softly. "They always could." He turned toward the great banners of the Empire that hung behind him. "Prepare the planetary shields." But when his words reached the defense command, they were already too late. The skies above the capital rippled like water. For a heartbeat, the stars disappeared, and in their place hung the shadow of a single ship. Black, silent, eternal. The same ship that had haunted every admiral's nightmare since the Purge. The defense towers fired at once, thousands of beams lancing upward, but they vanished before touching the hull. The human ship didn't even react. It simply hovered, as if watching. In that moment, all of Imperial space seemed to hold its breath. Billions of citizens looked up and saw it. The ghost from humanity's past returned to stand over their empire like a god judging its children. Across every screen, every radio, every network, the same message appeared. "We asked for peace. You gave us war. Now you will learn silence." Then the image faded, leaving only darkness. Power grids failed. Satellites died. Every communication channel went dead. The Empire had gone blind. On the Vigilant Star, the crew watched in horror as the capital's beacon vanished from their sensors. "Sir," the officer whispered, "they've lost everything. The capital's gone dark." Yaris stood frozen, staring at the empty coordinates where the heart of the Empire had once pulsed. "They didn't attack," he said quietly. "They just turned it off." He closed his eyes. "They could have destroyed us all, but they didn't." "Why spare us?" the young officer asked. Yaris looked out into the blackness where the ship had vanished. "Because they don't need to kill us," he said. "They want us to understand." He turned to his crew, voice calm but heavy. "Send a message to what's left of command. Humanity is back, and they're not angry. They're done pretending we matter." Outside, the void returned to its silent rhythm. Stars flickered again as the ripple faded. Somewhere far beyond reach, the human ship glided through the darkness, its engines still unseen, its purpose still unknown. Inside it, the crew of the long-lost Terran fleet moved quietly between glowing panels. One of them, a woman with silver eyes, watched the fading light of the Empire's capital and whispered, "They still think this is about revenge." Another smiled. Then let them keep thinking. It's easier than the truth. And what is the truth? The woman asked. The man looked toward the distant stars, his expression unreadable. The truth, he said, is that we've already won. The Emperor sat alone in the grand hall of stars, a vast chamber built from obsidian and light, where 1,000 planets once pledged their loyalty beneath his throne. Now the room was silent, the lights dimmed, and the stars outside seemed to flicker like dying candles. For the first time in his long rule, he felt something he could not command, could not threaten, could not silence: fear. His advisors had been shouting for hours, arguing over what to do, but their voices had become meaningless noise. He stared at the great viewing window before him, where the shadow of the human ship still hung over the planet like an omen carved into the night. It did not move. It did not attack. It simply watched, as if waiting for him to speak first. They could have destroyed us, he whispered to himself. They chose not to. That was what frightened him most. He had studied the Terran Wars, the Purge, every record sealed under imperial secrecy. He knew what humans were capable of, when cornered, but he had never imagined they would return not with fire but with silence. Across the palace, chaos reigned. Generals barked conflicting orders, ministers wept, soldiers abandoned their posts. The Empire's great machine had frozen, its pride stripped bare. No communication left the capital, no ships could jump, no satellites responded. It was as if the entire system had been swallowed by a quiet void. "Your Majesty," said High Marshal Vorek, his voice shaking as he approached the throne. "The planetary shields have failed. All orbital stations are offline. The 7th Fleet. We've lost contact." The Emperor did not look at him. "Lost contact," he repeated softly. "Or lost?" The Marshal hesitated. "Unknown, sire. The last transmission said the human vessel multiplied." Multiplied? The Emperor turned slowly, his old golden eyes sharp again. "You mean there are more of them?" "Not ships, sire," Vorek said, swallowing hard. "Reflections. One ship, but seen in every sector of the fleet at once, like it was everywhere." The Emperor leaned back in his throne, his face unreadable. "Omnipresent," he murmured. "How fitting for a dead species." He stood and walked toward the great map of the galaxy projected in front of the hall. Thousands of glowing stars shimmered across the air, marking every imperial world. But now, one by one, the lights began to blink out. First in the outer rim, then in the trade systems, then near the core. "Power failures?" the Marshal asked in panic. "No," the Emperor said quietly. "Witnesses." "Witnesses?" "Every world that once took part in the Purge is being visited." The words fell like lead. "By what?" Vorek whispered. "By their ghosts." As if to confirm his words, a cold voice echoed through the hall. "Not ghosts." Both men froze. The sound came from everywhere: walls, air, their own minds. "We are what you made us." The Emperor looked up slowly. The ceiling's holographic lights shifted, forming the faint image of a human face, ageless, calm, eyes glowing with soft silver light. The image flickered, distorted by static, but its presence filled the hall with dread. "You have returned," the Emperor said, forcing calm into his voice. "To finish what you started?" "To remind you," the voice said, "that survival is not forgiveness." "You could destroy us," the Emperor said. "Why do you wait?" The voice hesitated, as if considering the question. "Because we want you to remember what it feels like to be powerless." The Emperor's anger flared, but beneath it a deeper truth twisted in his chest. He was powerless. Every weapon, every ship, every system he had built to control the galaxy meant nothing now. The human ship had cut through them all like fog. The Empire's strength, its arrogance, its entire identity, had been built on the myth that humanity was gone. That myth had died tonight. "What do you want from me?" he demanded. "Confession?" The face flickered. "No, you are not worth confessing to. You are the echo of cruelty, the shadow of your own creation. We do not come for vengeance." "Then what?" the Emperor shouted, his voice breaking through fear. "What are you here for?" The human's eyes glowed brighter. "To collect what you stole," and with that, the image vanished, leaving only the quiet hum of the dying palace lights. Outside, thunder rolled, not from the atmosphere, but from space itself. The human ship shifted slightly, its hull unfolding like living metal. Columns of light shot downward, scanning the surface of the city. Wherever the beams touched, the buildings froze, their materials hardening into gray crystal. Citizens screamed as streets turned to glass beneath their feet. The Emperor watched from his window, his knuckles white. "They're not attacking," Vorek said, horrified. "They're preserving." "Preserving what?" "Us," the Emperor said bitterly. "They want us to see." On the edge of the plaza below, the massive statue of the Emperor, a monument of gold depicting him holding the imperial banner, began to crack. In seconds it collapsed, shattering into dust. Then from within the storm of light came something even worse. A sound. A heartbeat. Slow, deep, echoing through the planet itself. Boom, boom, boom. The same pulse that had haunted the vigilant. Star now resonated through the Empire's capital, shaking every tower, every city, every soul. The Emperor stumbled backward, gripping his chest as if feeling it inside him. "That sound," he gasped. Suddenly the floor beneath them trembled. Guards rushed into the chamber. "Your Majesty, the archives, something is happening." The Emperor turned sharply. "Show me." They activated the projection feed from the Imperial Data Core, where centuries of knowledge and history were stored. But instead of the Empire's banners, the screens now showed images of Earth. Oceans, forests, mountains, faces of men, women, and children, every memory the Empire had tried to erase. "They're rewriting our history," Vorek whispered. "No," the Emperor said. "They're restoring theirs." The realization hit him like a blade. The human ship wasn't just attacking physically. It was rewriting information, replacing every Imperial record with the truth of what had been destroyed. The more he watched, the more he saw how much they had buried. The Purge hadn't been a war. It had been genocide. Humanity had begged for peace. The Council of Species had voted to annihilate them to prevent competition. And the Empire had led the attack. The Emperor had read that file before, years ago, and erased it from existence. Now it returned to haunt him, displayed for every world to see. "They're exposing us to the galaxy," Vorek said, horrified. "They're showing everyone what we did." The Emperor clenched his fists. "Then the galaxy will know what it means to provoke us." He turned to his guards. "Prepare the Titan array. If the humans wish to remind us of the past, then we will show them the power of the present." Deep beneath the palace, enormous reactors awakened. The Titan array was the Empire's last weapon, a planetary defense cannon capable of piercing stars themselves. It had never been fired in combat. The ground rumbled as the massive weapon charged, drawing energy from the planet's core. "Target the ship," the Emperor commanded. "Lock on and prepare to fire." "Your Majesty," Vorek said, "if we miss, the backlash could destroy half the planet." The Emperor's eyes were cold. "Then at least the other half will die knowing we fought." The cannon roared to life, and for the first time since the Purge, the sky above the capital burned. A beam of pure light tore upward, striking the black ship dead center. The explosion lit the void, blinding the night. The city shook, windows shattered. People fell to their knees in hope and terror. When the light faded, the Emperor leaned forward. The ship was gone. "Did we?" Vorek couldn't finish the sentence. The Emperor smiled faintly for the first time in days. "Yes," he said. "Let the galaxy remember who rules it." But the smile didn't last. The sensors flared again, stronger than before. The ship reappeared untouched, not a single mark on its surface. Then in the next instant, it was no longer one. 1,000 identical vessels now surrounded the planet, black silhouettes stretching across the stars. The Emperor's blood ran cold. "That's impossible," Vorek whispered. It multiplied again. The voice returned, louder than ever, echoing across the city, the sky, and even through the Emperor's own heart. "You still think in numbers. You still think we are like you." The Emperor fell to his knees, clutching his chest as the pressure grew unbearable. "What are you?" he shouted into the air. The voice answered simply, "The future you feared." At that moment, the palace walls cracked. The ceiling split open as one of the human ships descended through the clouds. It stopped just above the throne room, casting a shadow over the Emperor himself. Its hull shifted, revealing faint lights that formed symbols, ancient Terran writing that no one alive could read except the machines. The air grew heavy, thick with static and cold. "They're landing," Vorek whispered. "They're coming." The Emperor stood, summoning the last of his pride. "Let them come," he said, though his voice shook. "Let them see that I am not afraid." But even as he spoke, the truth pressed into his bones. He was terrified. He had ruled galaxies, commanded armies, destroyed civilizations, but now he stood powerless before a single ship. The hall's great doors blew open with a gust of light, and through the haze stepped a single figure. Human, clad in dark armor that shimmered like liquid glass, face hidden behind a smooth black visor. The figure walked forward slowly, each step echoing like thunder in the silent hall. The Emperor tried to speak, but his throat tightened. The human stopped before him, removed the helmet, and revealed a face both young and ancient, scarred yet calm. His eyes glowed faintly blue, not with rage but with memory. "So," the Emperor said quietly, "the last human." The man tilted his head. "No," he said. "The first of the new." The Emperor stepped forward. "What do you want?" "Nothing you can give." "Then kill me." The human looked almost sad. "You still think this is about you?" He raised his hand and the palace began to fade, not burn, not break, but dissolve, as if time itself was peeling it away. The Emperor's voice cracked. "What are you doing?" "Freeing your world from its lies," the human said softly. "You built your empire on our bones. It's time they were returned." The floor crumbled into light. The city outside glowed with white fire, but there was no sound, no heat, only silence. The Emperor's last words were a whisper. "You can't erase an empire." The human looked into his eyes. "We already did." And with that, the light consumed everything. When it was over, there was no explosion, no crater, no ruins. The capital was simply gone, erased as if it had never existed. In its place floated a single fragment of crystal, glimmering faintly in the starlight. And at the center of that crystal was a small engraving, an old Terran symbol, the mark of Earth. Far above, the human ship turned slowly, silent as before vanishing into the dark. Somewhere inside it, the same human stood at the viewport watching the fading light. "He was afraid," he said quietly. A woman beside him nodded. "They all are when they realize what we've become." "Do you think they understand now?" She smiled sadly. "Understanding was never the goal." The man looked out at the endless stars. "Then what is?" She placed a hand on his shoulder. "To remind them that we are still here." And in that cold silence, the fleet moved once more, disappearing beyond the edge of known space, leaving behind a galaxy that would never again sleep without fear of the dark. The galaxy didn't notice at first when the capital vanished. The stars still shone, the trade lanes still flickered with distant signals, and the great worlds of the Empire still spun in silence. But then, one by one, the transmissions began to arrive. Across millions of systems, across every species that had ever mocked the name of Earth, screens turned black, lights dimmed, and a single voice filled the air. Calm, cold, human. It didn't speak in threat or rage. It spoke with the weight of memory, the quiet tone of something that had outlived gods and empires alike. "We are what you chose to forget," the voice said. "We asked for peace. You gave us fire. Now you will see what became of your flames." The message appeared everywhere, on starship monitors, in royal courts, in the homes of children on distant moons. Some thought it was a virus. Others thought it was prophecy. But deep down, everyone felt it. This was no invasion. This was judgment. On the mining world of Vardis III, the workers froze as their machinery stopped mid-motion. The hollow screens on the walls flickered and showed a vast blue planet covered in clouds. A voice whispered, "This was Earth." Then the image changed, showing cities burning, oceans boiling, ships falling from the sky. "This was your silence," the voice said. The miners watched in horror as the sky above them filled with shadows, massive shapes moving behind the clouds, too far to see clearly, but close enough to feel. On the merchant worlds, trade halted. Markets went black. Navigation beacons stopped responding. Every ship, every station, every planet that had ever profited from the fall of humanity now saw the same thing. Not war, not death, but truth. The Empire had called it the Great Purge. Humanity called it the beginning. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, chaos erupted. Representatives from 100 species shouted over each other. It's human propaganda. It's impossible, they were extinct. No one can project across the entire network simultaneously. But before the shouting could rise higher, the lights went out. The council chamber fell into perfect darkness. Then in the center of the room, a light appeared, a hologram flickering to life. It showed a woman standing in the ruins of a burned city. Her skin was dark with soot, her uniform torn, but her eyes shone like metal. She spoke softly, yet every word echoed through the hall with unbearable clarity. We begged you for help. We showed you the fires. We asked for mercy. Behind her, the sky burned. You said humanity was dangerous, that we were too wild, too emotional, too unpredictable. She looked into the camera. You were right. You made us that way. The image changed to show the stars as they were now. Vast fleets of human ships drifting through the void like shadows. We learned from your cruelty, the voice continued. We learned that peace means nothing without strength. We learned that mercy is only given to those who cannot be defeated. Across the chamber, the alien delegates sat frozen, their faces pale with terror. The oldest among them, a reptilian chancellor who had voted for the purge centuries ago, whispered, "It's impossible. They can't be this strong." But the younger ones knew better. The human fleets had been building in the dark for generations, hidden in places beyond the edge of known space, where the Empire's maps turned blank. They had grown silent, patient, watching every war, every empire rise and fall, waiting for this moment. And now they were not a nation, they were something else. The transmission shifted again. It showed a massive construct, an entire world forged of steel, orbiting a dead star. The human voice spoke over it. You thought we were gone. You were wrong. We are not a people anymore. We are the storm that follows arrogance. Panic spread faster than light. Armies mobilized. Fleets launched. Every race that once laughed at Earth now armed themselves for what they didn't understand. But as their warships gathered, they realized something terrifying. The human fleets weren't moving to attack. They weren't advancing on any planet. They simply appeared in orbit, silent, unmoving, as if watching. Some ships broadcast the same signal repeatedly, "Do not interfere." Others projected the image of a single white flag marked with Earth's ancient symbol, the blue circle of life. The message was clear. They didn't come to conquer. They came to remind. Yet for the Empire's surviving worlds, that reminder was more horrifying than war. On one small moon near the galactic rim, a group of alien children gathered outside. To watch the sky, a strange light shimmered above the horizon. They thought it was beautiful at first until the lights took shape. A fleet of ships, each one larger than the moon itself, hovering in silence. The air grew cold. The youngest child asked, "Mama, are they gods?" Her mother pulled her close, trembling. "No, child. They're what comes after gods." And as the fleet faded away into the dark, a single phrase echoed across the moon's communication towers. "We are not your myth. We are your consequence." Meanwhile, aboard the Vigilant Star, Commander Yaris watched the galaxy unfold in chaos. His ship drifted among the wreckage of what was once the Imperial capital, now reduced to a ring of crystal and dust. Every channel he opened was filled with fragments of the same human message, repeating endlessly in different languages, different tones, always with the same meaning. "They're broadcasting everywhere," his officer said. "Even the fringe colonies are hearing it. There's no way to stop it." "They don't want to be stopped," Yaris replied. "They want to be remembered." He looked at the shattered remains of the Empire's banners, drifting like ghosts in zero gravity. "What happens now?" the young officer asked. Yaris sighed. "Now? Now we watch what the galaxy does when it's no longer the top predator." On the frontier worlds, some governments tried to fight back. They sent their fleets toward the human signal sources. None returned. There were no battles, no explosions, just silence. Every ship that entered the human perimeter vanished without trace. Some whispered that the humans had learned to erase matter from time itself, folding it back into the void. Others said they didn't destroy their enemies, they absorbed them. Yet in some systems the humans did something strange. They reactivated ancient outposts, ruins of colonies destroyed during the purge. They restored them, rebuilt them, and left them shining like beacons in the dark. The message changed slightly in those regions. Remember us and you will live. It wasn't revenge. It was a lesson. As weeks passed, the galaxy began to fracture. Empires turned against each other, blaming one another for awakening humanity's wrath. Treaties dissolved. Alliances crumbled. The Galactic Council voted to send an envoy to the humans, a desperate attempt at peace. But when their ship approached the human border, something unexpected happened. A path opened through the void. A tunnel of blue light lined with stars that weren't real. The envoy followed it, trembling, until they reached a place beyond understanding, a massive sphere floating in the emptiness, larger than any planet, glowing faintly with a heartbeat of light. They transmitted a message. "We come in peace." A voice responded, calm and distant. "Peace was your first lie." The envoy tried again. "We wish to apologize." "Apologies are for the living," the voice said. Then the transmission ended, and the ship was gently returned to its starting point, unharmed, but deeply changed. The crew reported hearing whispers in their minds, seeing visions of Earth's past, feeling grief that wasn't theirs. "They didn't speak to us," one said. "They showed us." In time, the human fleet did send one final broadcast, but it was not a threat. It was a memory. The message began with the image of a child standing on the ruins of Earth, holding a flower that somehow grew through the ash. The child looked up at the sky and said, "We built again." Then the scene shifted to a vast fleet leaving a red planet, heading into the unknown. "We built again, and you never saw us." The camera panned out to show stars being born, planets being forged, and cities built from the skeletons of dead worlds. "You thought extinction meant silence," the voice said. "It meant evolution." Across the galaxy, millions wept as they watched. Even those who had hated humanity could not deny the weight of that voice. It was not pride, it was pain carried so long it had become strength. "We do not come to conquer," it said. "We come to remind the living that every world built on bones will one day hear them whisper back." After that, the message ended. The screens went dark, the stars returned, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy was quiet, not the silence of peace, but the silence of fear. Every species, every ruler, every soldier looked at the night sky differently now, wondering if the humans were still watching, and they were. Hidden fleets drifted in the shadows, unseen and silent, observing. Humanity had no need to shout anymore. They had spoken once, and it was enough to change the galaxy forever. In the dark edges of space, aboard the lead human ship, the commander watched as transmissions from thousands of alien worlds went silent. He turned to his crew, men and women, whose ancestors had once lived on Earth, and said softly, "They finally remember us." The woman beside him smiled faintly. "For how long, you think?" He looked back at the stars. "Long enough. Until they forget again. Then we'll remind them once more." The bridge was quiet, the hum of their engines deep and steady, like a heartbeat echoing through time. Outside, the human fleet began to fade, cloaking itself within the black of the cosmos. The galaxy below glittered with fear and awe, but humanity was already gone, slipping back into legend. Only one signal remained, repeating softly across the void, too faint to track, too distant to silence. It carried just 6 words, the same words that had started it all. "Inbound. Do not interfere. Earth remembers." In the cold reaches of deep space, far beyond the last shattered colonies, the Imperial fleet gathered in silence. over 1,000. Warships filled the darkness, engines burning like angry suns. Their commanders spoke in hushed tones, eyes filled with defiance and fear. The Emperor was gone, the capital erased, and the human message echoed across every channel like a ghost that wouldn't stop whispering. Yet still, the admirals refused to surrender. Pride was all they had left. The flagship Invictus Prime led the formation, its hull plated in gold and steel, a relic of an age when the Empire believed itself immortal. Inside, Grand Admiral Kareth stood before the viewing screen, his jaw tight, his hand shaking as he watched the holographic display. The image of the human fleet floated there, faint, silent, untouchable. "They think they can terrify us with illusions," he said coldly. "But they bleed like anyone else." His officers exchanged uneasy looks. "Sir," one of them said softly, "we've seen what they can do. Whole planets vanish, systems go dark." "Silence," Kareth snapped. "We are the Empire. We built this galaxy. We command its stars. One dead race hiding behind shadows does not frighten me." He turned back to the screen. "Prepare the fleet. We attack at dawn cycle." No one dared argue. As the fleet spread into formation, the void itself seemed to recoil. The black between the stars grew thicker, heavier. The sensors began to flicker again, just as they had before the capital's fall. "Gravitational anomalies detected," the science officer reported. "Multiple distortions across all quadrants." "How many?" Kareth demanded. "Hundreds, sir. No, thousands." The air grew tense. "Positions," the admiral barked. The ships formed defensive spheres, shields rising, weapons charging. For a moment, everything was still. Then space folded open like a wound. From the tears in the void, the human ships appeared, silent, black, endless. They didn't decloak. They didn't emerge from hyperspace, they simply were, as if the universe had been hiding them in its skin all along. Each ship was larger than anything the Empire had ever built. Their hulls shimmered with faint symbols, old Terran runes, glowing like embers beneath glass. They moved without sound or signal, only purpose. The first officer of the Invictus Prime whispered, "Sir, there are too many." "There's no such thing," Kareth said through clenched teeth. "Fire all forward batteries." The order echoed through the fleet. Thousands of ships unleashed their fury. Beams of plasma, torpedoes of antimatter, kinetic rails screaming. Through the void, all of them lanced toward the human ships in a storm of fire. For a moment, the stars disappeared beneath the glow of war. But when the light faded, "The human ship's REM report. Direct hits on multiple targets," said the officer, "but no damage registered." "That's impossible," Kareth shouted. "Increase power." "Fire again," the fleet obeyed. The void exploded once more. Yet the human fleet did not move, did not counterattack. The Empire's strongest weapons simply vanished against them, absorbed by invisible fields that bent light itself. Then, for the first time, the human ships responded, not with fire, but with a sound. It began as a low hum, deep enough to shake metal. Every sensor overloaded, every instrument screamed with static. The sound grew louder, resonating through hulls, through bones, through minds. "What is that?" someone yelled. "It's not a weapon, it's language." The voice was not spoken, but felt. Every soldier, every officer heard it directly inside their skulls. "You came to finish what you began. You came to erase us again." The fleet trembled. "You forgot what made us human." The hum shifted, becoming a single word repeated in every tongue known to the galaxy. "Remember." Then, without warning, the human fleet moved. It was not fast. It was inevitable. The lead ship advanced through the Imperial barrage untouched, each step through space distorting reality itself. The Invictus Prime fired everything it had, super lasers, gravity torpedoes, quantum mines. But the human ship simply passed through them as if through fog. "It's inside our range," screamed the weapons officer. "Evasive maneuvers." "It's too close," the helmsman shouted. But before the admiral could respond, the human ship stopped, directly in front of them. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then every light aboard the Imperial ships turned white. The crew screamed as their instruments melted into liquid. Their screens burned with ancient human faces, soldiers, mothers, children, all staring back. The voice spoke again, softer now like a memory. "You forgot the cost of your peace." Then in absolute silence, the human ship opened fire. It wasn't a beam or a missile. It was light, pure white, silent light. When it touched the Invictus Prime, the ship didn't explode. It simply stopped existing. The crew had no time to scream. One by one, the surrounding ships followed, dissolving into nothing. But the destruction wasn't random, it was selective. The oldest ships, the ones that had served during the Purge, vanished first. The newer ones lingered, their crews paralyzed, forced to watch their comrades disappear. "Sir," cried one young officer aboard a frigate. They're erasing us from time." "Shut down the reactors," another shouted. "Power down everything." But it was too late. The human fleet was not fighting. It was cleansing. The destruction spread across the armada like slow fire. Ships turned to ash in silence. Space itself warped under the pressure. When one cruiser tried to retreat, its engines reversed direction on their own, dragging it back into the human light. "They're controlling our systems," someone yelled. "They're inside the ship." On one of the smaller destroyers, the captain watched in horror as his bridge crew began to disappear. First their bodies, then their voices, then their memories. The log showed no trace they had ever existed. Only the captain remained, screaming into the void, "What do you want from us?" The answer came as a whisper that echoed through his dying mind. "To end what you began." Then his ship folded in half and vanished like smoke. Within an hour, half the Imperial fleet was gone. The remaining ships tried to flee, scattering in every direction, but the human vessels followed without moving, appearing instantly wherever they ran. "It's not pursuit," said one terrified officer. "It's omnipresence. They're everywhere." The last surviving squadron made a desperate jump into hyperspace. As they tore through the corridor of light, their sensors flickered, and there, inside the hyperspace tunnel, the human fleet was waiting. Ships that shouldn't exist in that dimension glided silently alongside them, watching. "That's impossible," cried the navigator. "Nothing can survive in hyperspace." The human ships drifted closer, their hulls glowing faintly. Then they whispered, "Neither could we, but we did." The next moment, the Imperial squadron emerged into real space, alone. Their homeworlds were gone, their star charts blank, their coordinates erased. Only one transmission remained in their logs: "Do not interfere." Back at the edge of the destroyed battlefield, the debris floated silently. There were no bodies, no wreckage, just dust, fine gray dust glowing faintly blue. Commander Yaris watched from the bridge of the Vigilant Star, unable to breathe. His ship had stayed back, too far to join the battle but close enough to witness its end. What did they do?" his officer whispered. Yaris didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the human fleet, now slowly moving through the remains. "They didn't destroy them," he said softly. "They unmade them." The human ships drifted in perfect formation, their engines silent, their lights dim. Then as one, they turned toward Yaris's ship. "They see us," someone gasped. Yaris stood tall, though his knees trembled. "Hold position," he said. "Do not raise shields. Do not fire." The human fleet paused as if studying them. Then one of the massive ships moved closer. Its surface shimmered and a figure appeared. A human projected in holographic light, standing tall on the void itself. It was the same one who had erased the Emperor's palace. His eyes were calm, his voice steady. "You did not fire on us," he said. "Why?" Yaris swallowed. "Because it wouldn't change anything." The man nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is hope for some of you yet." Then he turned away. "Leave this place. Tell them what you saw." The hologram faded and the human fleet vanished once more, folding back into darkness. The Vigilant Star remained adrift, its crew silent, staring at the empty sky. "They spared us," whispered the communications officer. "Why?" Yaris didn't answer. He turned toward the viewport, watching the dust of the Imperial fleet spread across the void like ashes in wind. "Because we're already dead," he said quietly. "They don't need to kill us." The ship's engines powered down, and for a long time no one spoke. Then faintly through the static came a transmission, soft, slow, steady. A child's voice, human, speaking in ancient Terran language. "When the last empire falls, the stars will remember who lit them." Yaris closed his eyes. "They're not fighting for revenge," he murmured. "They're fighting for memory." Days passed, and word of the Imperial fleet's destruction spread through the galaxy like fire. Entire governments collapsed. Some surrendered without a fight. Others begged for mercy, but the humans didn't come. Their fleets disappeared again into the shadows between stars. Only the silence remained, the silence of power beyond comprehension. On the ruined world, strange things began to happen. Monuments of arrogance crumbled overnight. Cities built on slave labor sank into the ground. Data archives rewritten themselves, replacing lies with truth. It was as if the universe itself was cleansing the memory of the Empire. In time, the galaxy realized something terrifying. Humanity didn't destroy the Empire for revenge. They erased it to give the galaxy a second chance, to remember, to change, to grow. In the farthest sector, hidden behind a veil of nebulae, the human fleet gathered once more. Their leader stood at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "It's done," said the woman beside him. "The Empire is gone." He nodded slowly. "Empires always fall. It's the lesson they refuse to learn." "And us?" she asked. "What do we do now?" He smiled faintly. "We watch, we wait, we remind them if they forget again." Outside, the fleet shimmered, fading back into the black until it became one with the void. For the first time in thousands of years, the stars were free of the Empire's shadow. And somewhere, drifting quietly through the silence, a single human signal pulsed again. Steady, eternal, unyielding, inbound. Do not interfere. Humanity endures. The galaxy drifted in silence. The stars burned quietly over the ashes of empires, and every world that once flew the Imperial banner now floated in fear of its own reflection. Space was no longer safe, not because of war, but because of what it remembered. The name human was no longer spoken aloud, it was whispered like a prayer or a curse. Across the former Imperial colonies, survivors gathered under broken skies, staring upward, waiting for the sound that had haunted their dreams. That deep, slow hum that came before a human ship appeared. But nothing came. The silence was worse. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy was free, and no one knew what to do with that freedom. Governments tried to reform, but fear ruled stronger than law. Old alliances broke apart, and small worlds declared themselves neutral zones, promising never to anger the ghosts of Earth again. Yet beneath the surface of that fragile peace, a deeper question spread like wildfire. What had humanity become? In the ruins of the Imperial Archive world, a group of alien scholars worked through the dust. The libraries had burned, the data cores shattered, but deep below the surface they found something untouched. A vault sealed in black alloy older than any known civilization. The inscription above the door was written in a language none of them recognized, but one scientist whispered that it looked human. They forced the vault open, expecting weapons, expecting death. What they found instead were recordings. Thousands of them. Holograms, documents, memories, all from before the purge. The lead researcher activated the first one, and a man appeared, human, young, wearing a military uniform stained with soot. "If you're seeing this," he said, "then we're gone. But if we're gone, it means you're still here. And if you're here, it means the cycle continues." The hologram flickered, showing images of Earth before the fall, children playing in sunlight, oceans reflecting the sky, cities alive with light. "We fought not to destroy," the man said. "We fought to be remembered. Remember us not for our anger, but for what we lost." Then the recording ended. The aliens stood in silence, none of them speaking. They realized the truth the Empire had buried. The humans hadn't wanted revenge. They had wanted to be seen as living beings, not monsters. And when the galaxy refused, they simply became what it feared most. News of the discovery spread. The Council of Species reconvened for the first time since the capital's fall, meeting on a neutral world carved from crystal and dust. Representatives from 100 surviving civilizations gathered under a single dome, each one carrying the same expression: shame. The first speaker, an old reptilian elder, spoke softly. "We thought extinction would bring peace. We thought wiping them out would save us. Instead, it damned us." Another delegate, a feline scholar with silver fur, stood next. "We built our worlds on lies. The Empire said humans were savages. But these recordings, they were builders, dreamers, artists. They created before we even learned to crawl. The hall filled with murmurs. Then why did they return in wrath? Someone asked. Because we left them no other language, the elder replied. We killed their voice, they answered with silence. The council fell quiet again. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, though there were no clouds. The wind itself seemed to whisper a warning. Far away, in a system no map dared name, the human fleet drifted in endless calm. Their ships no longer glowed with light or power. They rested dark and quiet in the shadow of a dying star. Inside the flagship, a single human walked through the vast halls lined with metal engraved in symbols that pulsed like veins. He was older now, his face lined with centuries, his eyes glowing faintly from the strain of time. He stopped before a large window that looked out on the remains of a star. It's done, he said softly. Behind him, another voice answered, feminine and calm. The Empire is gone. The Council is rebuilding. The galaxy remembers us again. He didn't smile. For how long? She stepped closer. Until fear fades. And then? Then they'll forget. He turned, his expression unreadable. Then we'll remind them. He walked toward the center of the room, where a massive holographic display showed the galaxy. Millions of stars glimmered in soft white light. Every empire falls, he murmured. Ours did. Theirs did. It's the only constant. He pressed his hand to the console and the hologram changed, showing hidden human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Planets covered in green forests, oceans untouched by war, children playing under alien suns. They survived, she said softly. The new generation. They're not soldiers, he replied, not anymore. They're builders again. He looked toward one of the distant colonies. That's how it should be. Let the galaxy see what we can be when we're not forced to fight. And if they come again? She asked. He smiled faintly. Then they'll learn what happens when you awaken the quiet. On one of those human worlds, a child looked up at the night sky. The stars shimmered like broken glass, reflecting colors unseen by any other race. Mother, the child said, are they still afraid of us? The woman beside her smiled gently. Maybe, but fear fades. Memory stays. The child frowned. But why did we have to hide? The woman knelt beside her. Because sometimes, to teach the stars peace, you must first show them silence. The girl looked up again, and in her eyes burned the reflection of Earth, not as it was, but as it would be again. Meanwhile, the Council's investigation continued. They traced the human signal back to its source, or what they believed was its source, a system long thought to be a myth, a black hole wrapped in a field of distorted gravity. When they sent probes, the data returned was impossible. The black hole wasn't consuming, it was creating. Streams of light emerged from its event horizon, carrying fragments of code, images, and signals. It's them, whispered the scientists. They're speaking through the singularity. The code formed patterns, mathematical, poetic, purposeful. It wasn't random. It was a language. The translation took weeks, and when the first line appeared, the galaxy held its breath. It said, "We left our bodies behind. We kept our will." The message continued, unfolding like scripture written by the cosmos itself. We are not gods. We are not ghosts. We are memory made living. The revelation spread across every world. Humanity had transcended form. They weren't just ships or soldiers anymore. They had become part of the very framework of reality, the quiet network within the stars, the energy between light and dark. Every time a star flickered, every time a ship heard static, every time silence fell before dawn, it was them. Watching, remembering, guiding. Some called it ascension. Others called it justice. The truth was simpler. Humanity had evolved beyond flesh, beyond time, into something eternal. They were not rulers. They were reminders. On the Vigilant Star, now a drifting monument near the galactic edge, Commander Yaris recorded his final log. If anyone finds this, he said, Know that humanity didn't destroy us. We destroyed ourselves long before they arrived. They simply showed us what we'd become." He paused, looking out at the stars. "And maybe that's mercy." He ended the recording and looked up. In the distance, he saw something moving between the stars, a flicker of light that formed a shape almost like a human silhouette. He smiled faintly. "Still watching," he whispered. "Good. Don't let us forget again." Then he closed his eyes, and for the first time since the war began, he felt peace. In the quiet that followed, the galaxy began to heal. Planets once scarred by conquest blossomed again. Alien races shared knowledge they had hidden for centuries. The phrase Earth remembers became a saying of hope, spoken in every corner of space. It meant endurance, rebirth, the unbroken will of life. Yet even as peace returned, no one ever saw the humans again. Their ships became myths, their worlds hidden, their voices woven into the background hum of the universe. But every so often, when a dying star reignited unexpectedly, or when a lost ship found its way home against all odds, someone would whisper, "They helped." And maybe, just maybe, they did. Far beyond the edge of known space, inside the quiet heart of a nebula, a single human stood at the window of a massive structure built around a star. He placed his hand against the glass, feeling the warmth through his skin. "It's strange," he said. "We spent centuries fighting for a place among them. Now we exist where they can't even reach." The woman beside him smiled softly. "We became the stars we were always chasing." "No," he said. "We became their conscience." She looked out at the infinite night. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" He shook his head. Understanding was never the goal. Survival was. Memory was. She nodded, and together they watched as the star pulsed one last time, sending out waves of light across the galaxy. Somewhere far away, those waves reached alien worlds, carrying the faint echo of a voice that said only one thing: "We endured." And so, the revelation became legend. The galaxy learned to whisper instead of shout, to build instead of conquer, to fear silence but respect it too. Because every being, no matter how far from Earth, knew that the humans were still out there, somewhere, in the folds of reality, watching, waiting, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never happen again. They didn't rule. They didn't reign. They simply remembered. And through that remembrance, the galaxy found peace in fear and light in the shadow that was once humanity's wrath. The years passed, and the galaxy began to breathe again. The silence of war faded into the quiet hum of rebuilding. Planets once scarred by the Empire now glowed with new life, their skies filled with the light of hope instead of fire. The Council of Species had reformed, humbled by what had happened, their grand halls now built not from marble and steel, but from glass and soil, a reminder that no civilization stood forever. Every culture, every race, every empire now spoke softly when they spoke of humans. Some called them guardians. Others called them ghosts. Most just called them the Watchers. It was said that the humans had become part of the universe itself, that they had folded their very existence into the starlight. No one had seen them for centuries, but no one had forgotten. And yet on a quiet day when the stars seemed too still, a strange unease crept into the galaxy again, because silence had returned and everyone remembered what that meant. It started on the fringe worlds, tiny outposts built near the old imperial borders. Traders began reporting strange readings, phantom signals, echoes of old Terran code repeating across the void. At first, no one believed them. Then, entire systems began picking up the same pattern, a pulse of light and sound that followed a rhythm every historian recognized. 3 beats, a pause, then one final tone. Inbound, do not interfere, the same signal that had once haunted the Empire before its fall. The council met in panic. "It's not possible," said one delegate. "They've been gone for 1,000 years. Another whispered, "What if they never left?" Across the galaxy, scanners lit up one after another. The signals were coming from everywhere and nowhere, from black holes, from empty space, even from inside stars. It was as if the universe itself was whispering humanity's heartbeat again. On a quiet moon far from the galactic core, a young astronomer sat alone in her observatory, watching the strange readings scroll across her console. Her fur bristled as she leaned closer. "This can't be real," she murmured. But then her screen flickered and the image changed. For a brief second she saw a face, a human face, staring back at her from the static. The man had calm eyes, kind but endless, as if he carried the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. He didn't speak. He only smiled faintly, and then the transmission ended. The astronomer sat frozen for hours, her heart pounding. When she finally found the courage to check her recording logs, she saw something that made her breath stop. The timestamp on the signal was from 200 years in the future. Soon, the phenomenon spread to every corner of the galaxy. Machines that hadn't worked in centuries suddenly activated, showing messages in ancient Terran languages. Data archives long thought lost now restored themselves, displaying forgotten histories and blueprints of technologies beyond imagination. The stars themselves began to pulse in rhythm with the human code, and across hundreds of worlds nights grew brighter. People gathered outside, looking up at constellations that now seemed alive. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy spoke the same sentence in 1,000 different tongues. They are returning. Deep in the core, near the ruins of the old imperial capital, now a wasteland of frozen glass, a faint light appeared in orbit. A single ship, small, unmarked, blacker than space itself, materialized without warning. For hours it just hovered, silent, unmoving. Then its hull began to glow with faint blue light, forming words across its side in hundreds of languages. Memory does not fade. The Council dispatched a reconnaissance vessel, though most of its crew prayed it wouldn't reach the target. As the ship approached, their sensors shorted out. Communications died. Only one final transmission made it through before the link went silent. A voice, human, clear, steady. "We are not gods. We are not ghosts. We are the children who learned from your fire." And then once again, silence. But this time the galaxy didn't feel fear, it felt anticipation. Weeks later, the skies of hundreds of systems darkened. Shadows moved between the stars, massive silhouettes gliding through the void like forgotten titans. Fleets of ships, sleek and dark, unlike anything ever built before, emerged from the folds of space. They didn't come with weapons drawn. They didn't demand surrender. They simply drifted in formation, surrounding every major star system, silent and still. The Council sent pleas, messages, desperate calls for peace, but no reply came. Instead, every screen in every home lit up at once. The same image appeared across the galaxy. A single human standing against the stars, his face hidden in shadow, his voice calm and familiar. "We watched," he said. "We waited. We remembered." His eyes lifted, glowing faintly like twin suns. "And now we return, not to rule, not to punish, but to remind." Behind him, the void lit up as thousands of human ships uncloaked, each one pulsing with that same quiet heartbeat. "You have learned to fear us," the voice continued. "But now you must learn what we feared, forgetting." The transmission shifted to show the galaxy as it was. The cities rebuilt, the planets blooming, the peace restored. "You've done well," the voice said. "You've grown. You've survived. But survival without memory is decay. We came once as wrath. Now we come as witness. Across worlds, people wept. Even those who had never seen a human, never believed the stories, felt the weight of those words. The message wasn't about war. It was about legacy. Humanity had not returned to destroy. They had returned to remind the galaxy that peace without understanding was just the pause between tragedies. "We will not lead you," the voice said softly. "We will walk beside you. But remember this, should you ever turn the stars into weapons again, you will see us before your sun sets." The image faded, leaving behind only silence. But this time it wasn't the silence of fear. It was reverence. On the surface of one world, a child looked up at the sky and saw something incredible. A human ship descended through the clouds, not to conquer but to land. Its engines were quiet, its movements graceful. When it touched down, the doors opened and humans stepped onto alien soil for the first time in centuries. They weren't soldiers. They weren't gods. They were explorers again. Scientists, artists, healers. The leader of the colony, a pale-skinned woman with eyes like liquid silver, looked at the gathered crowd and said simply, "We are home." And with those words, the great fear that had haunted the galaxy for ages began to fade. As years passed, humans began to move among the stars once more. They shared knowledge freely, rebuilt lost worlds, healed wounds no one thought could ever mend. The phrase Earth remembers changed meaning. It no longer meant warning. It meant hope. Children across the galaxy grew up learning human songs, speaking fragments of Terran words, studying the ancient stories of courage, loss, and endurance. The darkness that had once followed the name human turned into light. Even those who had once fought them came to see the truth. Humanity had never been about power. It had always been about persistence. They survived when no one should have. They returned when no one thought they would. And through their silence, they taught an entire galaxy to listen. Yet even as peace flourished, the humans never built an empire again. They refused the throne of power the galaxy offered them. They said one thing only: no empire is eternal, not even ours. Instead, they became something greater, a presence, a balance, the quiet force that kept the galaxy honest. Whenever greed returned, whenever arrogance grew too loud, stars would flicker, signals would hum, and the galaxy would remember the heartbeat of Earth. Humanity had become the conscience of creation itself. Far away, beyond the galactic rim, a single ship drifted alone through the void. Inside, an old human sat at a console, gazing out into infinity. The stars reflected in his eyes as he whispered, "We did it. They finally learned." A younger voice replied softly behind him, "Will they remember?" The man smiled faintly. "Always. Because we will remind them." He turned to the window, where the reflection of Earth shimmered faintly. Not the old Earth of war and ruin, but one reborn, blue and alive again, rebuilt by descendants who had returned to their cradle. Oceans glimmered, clouds danced, and the old scars of the purge were gone. The human leaned closer to the glass, his voice quiet but strong. "We came from dust. We became stars. And now we've come home." The ship turned slowly, engines humming in rhythm with that eternal pulse that once shook the galaxy. As it disappeared into the horizon of dawn, a faint signal echoed across the universe. Soft, calm, infinite, inbound. Do not interfere. Humanity remembers, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy smiled back.